There becomes a point in every NBA career when the league doesn't want them anymore and they have to call it quits on their NBA dreams. Some will retire, others will play in the G League, and some will take their talents overseas. Here are 5 former NBA players dominating overseas. Kendrick Nunn had one of the weirdest NBA careers. In the draft, many teams were turned off from picking him for several different reasons. He was undersized and was already 23 years old and wasn't a well-rounded player, but the biggest reason why he didn't get drafted was in 2016, he would plead guilty to a misdemeanor battery charge. Nunn would go undrafted, and the Warriors signed him to a non-guaranteed contract. In the Summer League, Nunn played well, however, it wasn't enough to earn a spot on the Warriors roster, and he got waived. In the G League, Nunn was an amazing scorer and averaged 20 points per game. The Miami Heat scouts saw Nunn balling out and told Pat Riley to give him a chance. The Heat organization really loved Nunn's work ethic and thought he was the perfect player to add to their team, so they signed him to a 3-year contract. Nunn would then shock the NBA world and drop the 40 bomb in a preseason game. He would then start in the season opener versus the Grizzlies and scored 24 points. He would continue to dominate and had a stellar start to the year. He would end up finishing in 2nd place in Rookie of the Year and was a big factor in the Heat making the playoffs after missing it last year. However, in the bubble, Nunn really struggled. Right before the playoffs, he would get sick with a non-COVID illness, and when he returned, he was now coming off the bench and the Heat were starting Goran Dragic over him. He did have a couple of decent games in the finals, but overall had a disappointing playoff run. In year 2, Nunn would have a solid second year, however in the playoffs he played awful, only averaging 10 points, shooting terrible from the field and from 3. That offseason, Nunn was a free agent and the Miami Heat let him walk. Nunn would then sign with the Lakers and things would take a turn for the worse. He was forced to play a lot more off ball, which was a role he wasn't familiar with. He struggled to shoot from 3 and was then traded to the Wizards. His time in Washington didn't last long and he was quickly waived. In free agency, no NBA team wanted him, so he was forced to go overseas. He would sign with the Panathinaikos, one of the worst teams in the EuroLeague. Nunn would struggle in his first couple of games, but would start to turn things around. The team went from one of the worst teams to one of the best, and the Nunn was a big factor in the Panathinaikos winning a championship in Greece. Nunn would then carry his team in the EuroLeague and would win the EuroLeague championship. This season, Nunn has been playing even better and has taken a huge leap in playmaking. He's been top 2 in the MVP race and just signed a massive contract to stay in Greece. Another guy playing well overseas is a former high school teammate of Nunn's, and his story is very different. In high school, Jabari Parker was a sensational superstar. He would go to Duke and would continue to prove he was the real deal. In the NBA draft, he was the clear-cut 2nd overall pick and was drafted by the Milwaukee Bucks. In his first 6 games, he put up solid numbers. However, 19 games later, he would suffer a season-ending injury. He would have a bounce-back season in year 2, and in year 3 was having a breakout year. Then he tore his ACL again. Jabari would play 1 more year with the Bucks, and after that, he really struggled to find a home in the NBA. He was bouncing from team to team to team, but nobody wanted him. He was now a huge liability on defense. He really lost a lot of athleticism, and he could no longer keep up with the speed of the NBA. In his final season in the league, he only appeared in 12 games and only averaged 9 minutes a game. With an awful season with the Celtics, the NBA was done with Jabari, so he would sign with Barcelona. Jabari has really thrived overseas in his new role. In the EuroLeague, they play more team style of basketball, and that has really benefited Jabari, and he's been a bucket getter over there. He has had many games in which he dropped 20 plus points, and in a recent game versus Andorra, he had 34, which became the highest scoring game for a Barcelona player in 11 years. However, the most surprising improvement has been his defensive mindset. He's really improved on the defensive end, and there has been some speculation that he could make a return to the NBA, but that would be a big mistake. Jabari has really benefited from the less games and the slower pace, and Jabari has said in recent interviews, "My focus is to play for Barcelona, and I'm in no rush to play in the NBA again." Jabari is just happy playing basketball because most guys who have 2 ACL tears in that short of a span usually never play it again. For the next guy on this list, we have to take a trip to China. Kenny Lofton Jr. has been torching the CBA, but unlike the first 2 players I talked about, he was never really given a legit shot in the NBA. After going undrafted in the 2022 draft, he would sign a 2-way contract with the Grizzlies. For the Grizzlies, he struggled to find minutes in the NBA, but would dominate the G League and would end up winning Rookie of the Year. He even got brought up in a game towards the end of the year and would score 40 points, but despite playing super well, the Grizzlies refused to give him a chance to prove himself. Sadly, the main issue with Lofton was his his defense. He was too short to guard the bigger, slower players and was too slow to guard the smaller ones. He also never developed a consistent three-point jumper. He would sign a couple of 10 days with the Bulls, Sixers, and Jazz, but nothing ever stuck, and at 21 years of age, he only had one choice: to go overseas. He would join the Shanghai Sharks organization. For the Sharks, he's been scoring the ball with ease, and it feels like he scores 40 every other game. He even had a game in which he dropped 52 points. He has been a big factor in the Sharks making the playoffs this year and was even given the Best International Player award. Despite Lofton playing amazing in China, he hasn't been getting any buzz to return to the NBA. Unfortunately for him, he has a lot of talent but is holding himself back. If he could ever get his way under control, he could make a return to the NBA. Now, a guy who will probably never step foot in the NBA again is Montrezl Harrell. Now, not too long ago, Harrell was one of the best role players in the NBA. In 2020, he won 6th Man of the Year and was averaging 18 points per game. He brought a lot of energy and hustle and was a guy every team wanted to have. However, in that year's playoffs, the Clippers would have an awful end to their season and blew a 3-1 lead to the Nuggets. There was going to be big changes to the Clippers, and not re-signing Harrell was one of them. Lucky for him, he would get quickly picked up by the defending champs. On the Lakers, Harrell would put up solid numbers. However, some of his biggest flaws became a lot more noticeable. His defense was a big problem. With the Lakers relying on elite rim protection and Harrell only standing at 6'7", he provided no resistance at the rim. During that offseason, he was traded to the Wizards, and a couple of months later, he got shipped off to Charlotte. He would then become a free agent and would sign with the Sixers. Finally, after a year of playing with bad teams, he could play meaningful minutes on a contender. He would then have a rough start to the season, and throughout the year, his minutes kept dwindling down. Doc Rivers would usually play Paul Reed over him, and then devastation hit. Harrell would suffer a season-ending injury, an ACL tear. And just like that, he disappeared from the NBA. After a year of rehab, he would then sign a contract with the 36ers, a team in the NBL. On the 36ers, he has been playing great, and he's had several games in which he dropped 20 plus points, and even had a game in which he scored 36 and 16 and led his team to victory. He would finish the year averaging 20 and 10 and was named to All-NBL second team. After the season was over, he would join the CBA. In his first 8 games in China, he's averaged 12 and 4, but he's only been averaging 18 minutes per game. Another guy playing well overseas is Evan Fournier, and he probably had the most successful career in the NBA on this list. In Orlando is where he had the most success in the NBA. He was a solid scorer. In his prime, he would average 17 a game. However, in the 2021 season, the Magic would completely dismantle their roster and traded almost everyone on their team. Fournier would then find himself on the Boston Celtics. After being on a fringe playoff team for most of his career, this was an opportunity to prove to the world that he could be a key player on a championship level team. He played well for them in the regular season and in the playoffs. However, in the offseason, Fournier and the front office didn't see eye to eye in free agency, and they could not agree to a new contract. Next year on the Knicks, Fournier put up decent numbers. However, as a team, they were bad, and they would end up missing the playoffs. That offseason, the Knicks would add Jalen Brunson, which was bad news for Evan Fournier. After starting the first 7 games for New York, he was benched. The lineups with him and Brunson just didn't work because both guys were below average defenders. Fournier's minutes continued to decrease with every game, and Tibbs started to give him DNPs. The DNPs started to pile up, and despite Fournier being extremely healthy that year, he only appeared in 27 games. After spending another year with New York, he would get traded to the Pistons. On the Pistons, once again, it was the same old thing. He wasn't appearing in many games, and they were more focused on developing their young players. So in free agency, they declined his player option. Now, as of 2025, you can find Fournier playing for Olympiacos in Greece, and he has been a big factor in them being one of the best teams in Europe. And this season, he has averaged 16 points per game for them. Since we're on the topic of overseas basketball, there's been a lot of all-time great NBA players you probably didn't know played overseas. If you want to hear more about their journey overseas, click right here.